Good evening, councillors, and anybody that may be joining us. Welcome to this meeting of the Policy and Finance Committee in yet another virtual surroundings. Quite a busy, detailed and worthwhile agenda again this evening, which I'm pleased to see. I think it would be remiss of me, I'm sure most people are aware, but the announcement has been released today that Newark and Sherwood, along with all of Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire, Derbyshire, Lincolnshire, will be in Tier 3 of the new restrictions that come into effect next Wednesday. We've put up as a council as much information as we can presently on the website, and we'll do so on social media. You knew at the same time as me, residents knew at the same time as me, so we're digesting that, but reflecting on questions and answers from previous restrictions and seeking to answer those again this time. So we'll be iterating a lot of information and putting out some video graphics, I think they're called, and other technological things that somewhat elude me. We'll be doing that in the run-up to Wednesday. It's a mixed bag, in honest. It's being described as tougher, which I understand it is nationally, but I think for ourselves locally, having been in what was Tier 3 plus, albeit just for 6 days, and Tier 2, there is some variation for us. So retail will be open, which we didn't experience more recently, but there will be difficulties for the hospitality industry, still restrictions on mixing in households. We will get that information out. So I think the key thing I'd want to put across, so that I'll explain more as the days go on, is there are 5 clear metrics the government are using on these. I shan't go into the detail. Probably the most important one of which, however, is capacity in our hospitals. And I know that they're not necessarily full, but there's a very high percentage of patients with COVID, not COVID related, with COVID in COVID wards on respirators at the current time. So there is that difficulty. And then, of course, with flu and other winter illnesses, there's that risk. What was interesting in the information that the ministry did share with us was that on all those metrics, we are, as a district and nearly as a county, approaching a plateau, and or the figures are going in the right direction. So we do have that hope that when a necessary review comes forward, we might move into Tier 2, and we'll encourage residents to support us in that undertaking. So thank you for that indulgence. You'll see that I've removed yet again Chairman's update from the agenda, not least because you get updated very regularly from me, and I think that the meat of that is in that report, or in terms of public communications, we've done those timely and necessary as they occur rather than wait for these meetings. Will advise councillors there is the item on declarations as to whether we're recording the meeting. Obviously we're live streaming. Bear that in mind, I sometimes forget. And I have accepted another item, which I will take as 11A, which is with regard to the recruitment of community engagement officers. So, crack off. Apologies for absence. I believe there are none. Declarations of interest by members and officers, and as to the party whip, I'm happy to take those as we go through if people prefer, but if councillors have any now, please raise your digital hand. Okay. Declarations of intention to record the meeting, again, with the exception of ourselves. I'm assuming nobody else will. Shout now. Fine. Then we have the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of December, pages 5 through to 18. Is it the wish of the meeting that I take those as an accurate record? If anybody disagrees, shout now. Then I will take that as agreement for that. Thank you. The forward plan of our items to receive as a committee and discuss. Again, that's there to note and receive. Anybody wish to raise a digital hand? No. Through then on the agenda, taking in the first instance our policy items for decision. The first report, agenda item 6, being grounds maintenance of HRA land. This has gone through other functional committees prior to it coming to us, and I think it is being presented to us by Suzanne Sheed.
Thank you, Chairman. So this report presents the business case for Newark and Sherwood District Council Street Scene Service to deliver the grounds maintenance for our HRA land. The current contract expires in March 2021, and so it provides us with an opportunity for the council to expand its street scene responsibilities, bring more money into the council, and ensure a consistency of services with improved reporting for customers, delivering one council services and providing us with greater scrutiny and quality control of the service. We have consulted 250 tenants as part of this work. 150 returned their views, so it's provided us a good baseline for the service now and areas that tenants value in the service or want to see more of in the future. The report outlines the improved service to tenants, residents and the council of approving this proposal. And section 3.7 summarises future enhancements and the costs associated with them. And as you say, Chairman, I had attended both Leisure and Environment and Homes and Communities committees and confirmed that both are in support of ending the existing contract and expanding our internal team to deliver the grounds maintenance survey. So today I'm asking Policy and Finance Committee to approve this recommendation and the financial outlay required to set up this contract in-house. So that's a one-off revenue cost to the general fund of £14,420 that will be met from reserves, and an initial capital outlay of £133,600, which will be funded by borrowing. That's everything from me, Chairman, if there's any questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, no, fully support this. This is something I think should have been done a long time ago. In our grounds maintenance team have got a great record with all the green flags they get for the parks that we look after, so we know that the quality of their workmanship is brilliant, and I think we can expand this further out to helping parish councils or doing further sort of work as well, and expanding this this business within the council, make it grow.
Thanks, Roger. Councillor Wendels.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I also like to express my full support for these proposals, and indeed they were supported by my committee, Homes and Communities Committee, on Monday of this week. I do think we will see some significant improvements and benefits to our tenants, and look forward to also being able to, as things bed in the future, bring in some further enhancements as well as we continue to consult with tenants and see exactly what they'd like to see. But yeah, fully supported it, Chairman.
Thanks, Tim. I think this makes absolute sense. And looking forwards, it means we'll have a consistency not of just delivery, but of the standard, of the quality of maintenance, and laying into that our climate change agenda and strategy, and our environmental strategy, and the work we're bringing forward on green space and open space. So this does mean that our suite of assets, as it were, we will have that consistency across them. And as you quite rightly say, Roger, if we can seek to work with parishes on that as well, then it becomes increasingly visible to our residents. The Chief Executive wishes to comment.
Yeah, thank you, David. Just to add to what Suzanne said, that the first priority is clearly to improve the service to tenants, but what we're also doing is building the capacity of the grounds maintenance service. So in time, it should be able to trade commercially as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief Executive. So I will move those recommendations as they appear on page 29. Do I have a seconder?
Formally second, Chairman.
Thank you, Roger. As we've done previously, because it's quicker and easier, is there anybody against this recommendation? No, then that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Just re-enlivening my screen. So our next item, item 7, Partnership for the East Midlands Building Consultancy, and I believe this is Mr. Lamb.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This is to update you on the building control partnership that we have between ourselves, Rushcliffe and South Kesteven. And members will recall that South Kesteven are the lead partner and essentially the delivery partner as part of the arrangement. You'll notice the report seeks to update in 3 areas. Firstly, the practitioner review that's been undertaken, which looks at an appropriate model for the service moving forward and the ability to expand it or not into other areas. And secondly, 2 items linked to the financial standing. So firstly, a wider financial update, and then secondly, an update on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. If I may just take, Chairman, and draw members' attention first to the service review. That's set out in section 4 onwards on page 32 of the agenda. And specifically, if you look at paragraph 4.6, helpfully the partnership got effectively a clean bill of health in terms of what the service practitioner found as part of the process. Notwithstanding that, there were a number of recommended areas to revisit, and that particularly was around how the operational lead for the organisation needed to take this forward. So that's something that's being picked up by the partnership board. Just in terms of the options themselves, you will see they were there set out on 33 and 34 of the agenda. I won't run through all of those now, but it is fair to say that given the highly competitive nature of the market, it was considered that expanding the partnership either in terms of additional partners or in terms of a different model wasn't considered appropriate. And it was felt that if there were additional opportunities, and you've picked up from the report that we've been approached on principally ad hoc basis from other local authorities for assistance with their own building control capacity, the current arrangements would allow us to do that essentially on a contracted basis rather than having additional partners in the tent. So you will see that the recommendation is to continue as we are, notwithstanding there are a requirement for a series of service improvements to better get a market share in what is a competitive market in terms of other approved inspectors. Turning now to the finances, if I may, and I'll take the global picture first. So again, at 2.5 on page 31 of the agenda, you will see there the wonderful world of building control accountancy in terms of two tables that run concurrent. And I'm afraid they do not merge in that you don't net one from the other, the way that building control accountancy works, such that essentially the funds are ring-fenced and need to be reinvested back into the service. But what you can see there, and what is helpful, is the overall net cost to the council each year and going back historically, and particularly the deficit being paid off. So members will recall that all partners went into the partnership with a deficit. Ourselves and South Kesteven have now paid off that deficit and continue to work up a credit. And essentially what is happening is that credit in future years will be used to contribute to our general fund contribution and therefore reduce it, or indeed when we are all in credit, and Rushcliffe currently is not, simply because of the size of deficit that they entered the partnership in, that could be reinvested in service should we choose to. Elsewhere, just in the financial comments of the report, you will have picked up that at one point in the pandemic, as you could imagine in early March, activity on site disappeared overnight, to the extent that there was a 91% drop in activity and income. I'm pleased to say that thanks to colleagues at South Kesteven, the way that the services continue to be managed and the Coronavirus Job Retention Fund, we are in a position where the year-end position should hopefully only be an impact of £474 per partner. Now that is forecast, I might add, but it gives you a flavour of how we've worked with colleagues to insulate the council and its partners from any financial impact and activity. So the recommendations are set out on page 36 at section 6, and I'll take any questions if there are any, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Girling.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I second the recommendation and reserve my right to speak. Excuse me.
Thank you, Keith. I suspect that reservation might turn out to be academic. I think Mr. Lamb may have said it all there, but it's just to iterate. Never mind the complexities about building control. This has paid off a debt. Those councillors present at the time will recall not only did we accrue that debt in the relevant account, which is separate to other elements, but we also had issues around not just recruitment, but retention. As the private sector became more competitive. So this arrangement has proven itself, been successful, means us almost a cross subsidy for our statutory roles around dangerous buildings and others. So I think it's utterly sensible to continue as we are, not to imperil that partnership, but to make the improvements that were identified. Councillor Wendell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I absolutely agree with your comments. We've obviously moved from a position where costs were high and the financial position wasn't as good to a position now where costs are much lower, and we've got rid of the deficit. We're into a profit inverted commas position. So I agree with the business as usual. With the service improvements, the option one, I think now's not the time really to move to alternative models when this one's working really well.
Thanks, Tim. So Councillor Girling seconded it. I'll propose the proposition. Is there anybody against? That is also unanimous. Thank you very much. Through to item 8 then, the revised customer feedback policy. And I think this is Jill Baker.
It is, thank you, Chairman. So I'll just get my paperwork up. Sorry, I've just lost my screen, bear with me. Here we are. So again, this report went to Homes and Communities on Monday and was approved subject to Policy and Finance Committee approval. It's quite a straightforward report which explains why we have needed to review the customer feedback policy, aligning what was a housing feedback policy with the councils, and also taking the opportunity to amend it following both the Housing Ombudsman and the Local Government Ombudsman both revising their best practices. There's a number of amendments in the policy. Firstly, that upon receiving the complaint, the manager dealing with the complaint speaks to the complainant, as this is the best way to accurately define the complaint and its desired outcome. The stage 1 complaints will be allocated to a manager instead of just to a business manager, and the stage 2 complaints will be allocated to a business manager or director instead of just to a director, and this is to do with quantity and being able to get them dealt with in a more acceptable timescale. And finally, the complaints will not usually be accepted where the event giving rise to the complaint occurred more than 6 months ago. The housing feedback policy did have an additional option stage that the tenant could request that the tenant's panel reviews their complaint. The Housing Ombudsman doesn't believe that a third stage is necessary as part of a complaints process, but then has gone on to say that if a landlord strongly believes it requires one, the reasons should be detailed in the self-assessment which we needed to undertake. So what we're proposing is that the stage remains in the policy for now, as further changes may come out of the legislation following the Grenfell inquiry and the self-assessment by the Housing Advisory Group. So I'm hoping you've had a chance to read the report and the policy. The recommendation is a paragraph 10, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. As you rightly said, straightforward report. We like those. Are there any questions or comments on this one at all? Okay, so as you rightly point out, Jill, it's already been through one committee on its route to us, and it's quite right, again, we have that consistency and use this process as a means of learning about our services and improving that capacity to respond quickly. So it's all very welcome. Thank you for the work on that. Don't take it personally, there's no questions. Assume it is comprehensive. So there are no questions. I shall propose that. I think Councillor Wendell is nodding at me to second it.
I will second that, Chairman.
I thought he was. It looked that way. That having been done, is there anybody that objects at all? Please shout now. Okay, that's also unanimous. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jill. Through then to item 9, Newark Towns Fund, and that's Mr. Lamb again.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So the Newark Towns Fund update. Members are already aware of the Towns Fund and the Town Investment Plan, I am sure. And I'm sure you've all seen the item that was approved by Economic Development Committee last week, which dealt with much of the strategy and policy within this and gave an update that was fuller than the one before you. So forgive me for that. I didn't want to repeat much of that in there. Notwithstanding that, just by way of a brief upground, you will be aware that Newark was one of 13 that submitted nationally in cohort 1. The first 6 towns have been announced. none of which have received less than £21 million, one of which has received more than the up to 25 million that they are available for, which was Blackpool, that I'm sure you've seen. And I am still told that in the coming weeks, and no later than Christmas, we will be invited to agree heads of terms with the government for our up to £25 million. Just in terms of some of the detail then, and this is specifically the detail pertinent to the recommendations that are contained in the report. So as I said earlier, I'm not going to focus on all of the projects which still continue and progress and are dealt with elsewhere, but it is important for me to reference two. And those two are detailed at paragraphs 3.5 and 3.6 of the agenda. At 3.5, we've got the International Aerospace Training Institute, or the IASTI, it's become shorthand for, and you are aware, I'm sure, and recall that the Lincoln College Group, Aviation 360, a university partner, and military and civil aviation, including the RAF and the MOD, are involved in this in terms of this post-16 education facility. I can also report that a large American aircraft manufacturer is involved, albeit I can't name them currently as part of this process, but I do hope to again this side of Christmas. Alongside that, there is the smart innovation, supply chain and logistics work that's ongoing, the enterprise zone work. And again, just for members' awareness, you will have picked up that ourselves, the University of Lincoln, the two universities of Nottingham have commissioned consultants to work through liaising with industry, with investors and with policymakers to enshrine how to take this forward and effectively how to make it happen, working with the partners that I've outlined there. And what you will see there is an aspiration for both of those uses to sit alongside a hotel use, which is another long-standing aspiration that we've had, as identified principally in the destination management plans and the economic growth strategies and town investment plan. Now, clearly, in order to undertake the work to make that happen and maintain momentum, there will be a requirement to undertake feasibility work. And as part of that feasibility work, one, of course, needs to be mindful of the current uses on the site. And you will see there that the site I've referred to as Newark Gateway, which is consistent not only with the town investment plan, but with the previous Gateways report you may recall we did several years ago. So firstly, in terms of the livestock market, I understand members are all aware, and certainly the Economic Development Committee have referred to this both at the September and November meetings. But following a market process, there has been a third party interest expressed who have not expressed an appetite to come to the existing site, but would prefer to relocate directly to the showground. And we are working with that partner and with the showground to be able to facilitate that and understand the timetable to make that happen. Alongside that, of course, we have the Lurry Park, and you will be aware that it will be a requirement for us as officers to bring to you recommendations and feasibility work on the technical appropriateness of that move taking place and any associated cost and business plan alongside that. The costs themselves, you will be aware, are subject to a separate exempted paper. That is hopefully for obvious reasons, insofar as it wouldn't be appropriate in terms of our recommended feasibility work for the markets to be aware of our likely budget as part of that process. In terms of the cattle market itself, or the livestock market itself, given that that is essentially now redundant, you will see again in the exempt report and in the main recommendations on the agenda that we are seeking consent to be able to work through demolishing and securing the site. There are holding costs for the authority at the minute, which are set out on the main agenda papers, particularly in section 6, and it's considered prudent to be able to move forward. So that's a brief summary for you, Chairman. The recommendations are in section 8 on page 48, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Presently, I have no hands raised. I do now. Councillor Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, no, a good paper, very exciting times to Newark, and I thought probably now's the time to sort of like remind everybody about the road improvement, the A46 improvement, and the consultation that's coming out at the 9th of December for 8 weeks, which will hopefully go forward and improve all the road infrastructure around Newark as well. And combined together with the Towns Fund and what the plans we have for Newark, it's very exciting times.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Girling.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just think this is it's a cracking report, and it shows the ambition of this council in terms of what we want to achieve. And I'm really encouraged by the fact that if we don't get the full £25,000, £25 million, you know, we've still got an ambition here to make things happen. Seeing Blackpool got more, maybe we will.
Yes, one would hope. It's quite illuminating of Mr. Lamb to inform us of that, but obviously our application is high flying in comparison. Any other further questions or comments on that? Right, well, I think it's probably sufficient to commend all partners again in this. It is obviously derived from the town board, so it's not council driven. This is driven by businesses, educational providers, partners and employers, I think probably most importantly. We know the issues faced in the area, not just Newark, but it's Environ, and this tackles them head on. A lot there about educational attainment, therefore hopefully aspiration, and attracting in employers that in turn hopefully will give higher wages. So we will keep our fingers crossed and hope for not just an imminent announcement or decision, but a good one. And commendations, Matt, for all the work you've put into that. So the recommendations there are at page 48.
Second it, Chairman.
Excellent, thanks. I'll propose it then, Keith.
I thought you had.
Nearly.
Okay, I'll wait.
I love the keenness, the enthusiasm. Keep it going. It's proposed and seconded. Is there anybody against? Brilliant. That's also unanimous. Wonderful. Thank you, and thanks again, Matt. Right, then we are on to item 10, infrastructure funding statement, and I think this is Mr. Norton.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. This report follows, we had a report in June to the committee setting out the new government requirements for an infrastructure funding statement, which you have to prepare on a yearly basis, setting out all developer contributions that we've received and money that we've spent. Set out in the appendix is the infrastructure funding statement. It includes quite a lot of information, and it sets out the required information the government asks, along with other information that we feel is important to provide to the community, to provide in one place transparency about what we spend our money on and what money is passed to other people and spent on. So at page 53, you'll see there the table 1 sets out the headline figures for community infrastructure levy collected and section 106 money collected, and also the money that we hold as well. And page 58, that provides some more detail on significant on community infrastructure levy, in particular at 3.3 there, significant contributions we've received this year, which explains, I think, the jump in SIL receipts that we have seen over the reported year. At page 66, you will see that it page 60 sets out section 106 contributions that we've received and money that we have agreed. I would point to figure 2 on page 61, which shows the share of contributions in terms of what we've received money on, which is an interesting one that I've not seen before, but shows that we collect money for a range of things. The largest percentage there, of course, education, which is often quite easily directly related to the number of new people in an area that are created by development. Page 66 of the report, I suppose, sets out really some of the planned expenditure we have. And this is really a new element. We have, of course, always made clear that our priorities for our SIL money is the A1 overbridge. But I would draw your attention to the full list there, and you will see that on page 67, and you'll see that's made up of what was known as the Regulation 123 list, which was the old list we had to prepare for the SIL. But you'll see that some of those projects have been delivered by other means, so money by the County Council. Those are the ones in green, and the yellow ones there are the ones that are going to be delivered by major road network infrastructure funding from the government. The ones that we still have to contend with are the ones in red. And the key one there is the A1 overbridge, as I've already said. The reason the A1 overbridge is so important is because it's key to delivering the housing development and the employment development around the south of Newark. And also because it will deliver thousands of houses, that means it will deliver thousands of pounds worth of, it will deliver millions of pounds of SIL, which will then we'll be able to spend on the other priorities in the list and any other priorities that emerge over the years. So hopefully this is the first time we've done this, but it's an organic document. Next year it will be different. It will have more information in it, and we feel it's an important document to set out council priorities for spending developed contributions. The recommendations are at page 52. Well, the recommendation is indeed at 8 on page 52 of the report.
Thanks, Matthew. Can I say straight off, I obviously saw the draft of this prior to compiling the agenda, and I did thank the relevant officer that had sent it through. Forgive me, I've forgotten, senior moment, I've forgotten his name.
Yeah, sorry, I was actually going to say this is mostly been the work of Tim Dawson with assistance from myself and Carolyn Pinder and Jenna Norton in the finance department.
Well, congratulations to you all, because it is the first one, but actually, given what the subject matter is, I'm not going to say it's an enjoyable read, but it's a good read. And I thought it did quite a good job there of it, because Section 106 and SIL are in effect a form of development tax. But it did, I felt, a really good job of demonstrating the public services that those should be apportioned to. And also, by virtue of the list you drew attention to, how our planning departments and others have thought ahead. So whatever development occurs over here, we have thought of the impact, particularly around road infrastructure and schooling, and how there are those contributions. And I think sometimes that gets a bit forgotten. And similarly, that some of those pots, you have to sit on and wait for them to accrue before you can make the spend and make a project realistic. So I love that this is in the public domain in a different way. It always has been. It's not private, but that it's been compiled in this way, because I hope, there are those that don't want any housing development, but they need to know the government require a certain, and that's not criticism of the government, there is a requirement for a certain number of houses every year, and this just demonstrates that we're trying to ensure that there is no negative impact on what pre-exists, and that what is new is well provided for. So I think it's a cracking report personally, but I'll propose it into doing the recommendation at page 52 and open it up to committee. Any other comments on that? Councillor Delaney.
Thank you, Chairman. I can unmute myself, but unfortunately my video is not working, so that's your advantage, not mine. As you rightly say, this is an excellent report. It's a very open report. It highlights very transparently the income we're generating from developers, whether through Section 106 or through SIL. It reinforces the concerns that we voiced previously at the last full council meeting about the proposed changes in the planning white paper, which would have the SIL replaced with a national infrastructure levy set centrally by government, and therefore we would lose the local control and decision making potentially that we have currently. It also highlights in terms of in terms of SIL, the potential for those authorities, those town and parish councils who do develop a neighbourhood plan to generate a meaningful sum of money as a result of getting 25% of the SIL receipts from developments in their areas that qualify for SIL. And therefore I do encourage other town and parish councils to perhaps start work on developing neighbourhood plans so they can benefit financially from them. It also highlights in terms of the areas in which we have expended our income on SIL. There is a contribution there shown of some £620,000 to the Joseph Whitaker School in Reneth. And of course, there is no charge on SIL in the large part of, if not all, of the Sherwood area. We have differential levels across the district. Reneth does not levy SIL, but we can use the funds that are generated across the whole of the district in those areas where SIL is chargeable to provide benefits in those areas where SIL is not chargeable. And that's a very welcome development that I'm sure those councillors in the west of the district will recognise and trumpet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Roger. Councillor Clark-Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Just looking through that list, I think there's nothing more frustrating than seeing Section 106 money and it not being spent when there's the opportunity. So it's really good to see that we're actually not just planning and allocating that, but it's actually getting spent as well. And a really good job of it. I mean, I could pick out a few examples there. I suppose Blidworth's a great one with the leisure centre and other things there too. So just really to say well done on making sure that we're doing that, and we are getting that value for money, and we're not wasting people's money. We're actually putting it where they want it and where it can make a big difference. So I think that's a really positive part of the report that needs recognising.
Thanks, Brendan. That's a really good point. I'm glad you teased that out. Thanks. Any further questions or comments? Okay. Page 52, wasn't it? So I propose the recommendations. I think Councillor Girling's already seconded those.
No, I haven't seconded this one. You're jumping in now, Chairman. I'll second this report. I've been waiting, so I didn't jump in early.
I just wished to, sit on your due diligence there. Thank you for seconding that, Councillor Girling. That's very good of you. Right. Us having done that, is there anybody that opposes those recommendations? Unanimous again. Gosh, this is wonderful. Overflowing with collegiate. Thank you. And thanks to you, Matthew, for that. Thanks very much. Like the goatee, by the way. Item 11 then. The serve site update. And I think, I'll apologise to committee for this. I think this is Mr. Lamb again.
It is, Chairman. I will give everybody a change of voice at some point, I promise you. So, yes, this is the additional paper. So I'll just give members a moment to be able to find that. Apologies for this coming through late. You will see from the detail of the report, and I will talk through this in detail. I'm conscious not all of you are aware of the site. So the site itself is formally, it's known as Flowserve, and was formerly Worthington Simpson. It was quite a large employer at the time, and still is, in fairness, in terms of Flowserve, but not as large as it was. And not unlike many of our traditional factory setups, whether it be the NSKs or whether it be a little bit like we have in the west of the district, the factory was accompanied by a range of support services and facilities for employees. And in this case, there was Sportsland, the social club and bar, and even residential properties, which have subsequently been sold off. Members, I'm sure, will recall that from 2015 onwards, sadly, there was a decision taken by the owners of the site to reduce activity at this base. And that led to a number of redundancies and a shrinkage of the employment on the site. However, there is a retained factory facility, which I understand is linked to the fact that there is an ongoing requirement for a UK base to service particular contracts. What has nevertheless happened, though, and many members may recall that this site's been subject to planning applications in the past. So if I could ask you to turn up figure 1 for me on page 2 of that additional note, you will see that what's taken place is 2 sales of land from Flowserve to third-party companies. So that figure 1 on page 2 shows one land transaction, and you will see that that is to CB Collier NK Limited, and you can see the value for that. And then if you wouldn't mind just turning over the page for me, and I'm going to ask you to look at the green area that's entitled Sports and Social Club at figure 2. That was land transaction number 2 between Flowserve and CB Collier NK bracket SSC Limited. So you will see there that there are 2 different companies, notwithstanding the difference in the name is the bracketed SSC. Now, just to bring you up to wider speed for background, and this is detailed at paragraphs 2.4 and 2.5 of the agenda. Firstly, you may be aware that the site has been subject to a couple of planning applications, but most recently one, which has sought residential redevelopment of the site. You will note that that planning application has been refused, principally on the grounds that due to the costs of implementing said residential scheme, the proposals cannot afford sufficient developer contributions in the opinion of the local planning authority. So just to be clear, there's no, quite nuanced, there's no dispute in terms of the overall costs. It's that those overall costs make the development unsustainable. That isn't for this committee to consider, and indeed that is now for the planning inspectorate consider and the council's team on behalf of the councillor's local planning authority to defend. What you will have picked up as part of the background at 2.5 is that separately the council will be writing to Homes England to make clear that the current situation is unacceptable and unsustainable to the council in terms of that planning application, and will be seeking additional grants from the government to be able to provide appropriate contributions. And that's something that Homes England will have to consider and deal with, and indeed the applicant or appellant, depending on if you're wearing an LPA hat, will need to deal with. Just if I may then, to get to the nub of the issue, and this is at paragraphs 2.6 onwards, you will see there that the Sports and Social Club, which I've described as an umbrella association, hopefully you understand the meaning of that, in that there are various sporting groups, community groups, different activities that take place on the site, some of which are sporting organisations in their own right. So, for example, the football club and the team associated with that, and the Bows Club. Notwithstanding, they operate on the site under that Sports and Social Club umbrella. You will have seen that some uses have already made the decision to leave the site because of some of the uncertainty, particularly surrounding what I've referred to there at paragraphs 2.7 and 2.8. And that is the issue that the landlord has been clear that they are seeking what they term a reasonable rent for the continued use of the site. The landlord's view of that rent, which has been, as I understand it, or as we've been informed, supplemented from a team of surveyors, is detailed on paragraphs 2.8 of the agenda. What's equally detailed that you will see as you move forward in terms of the proposals is that the Sports and Social Club, and in conjunction with Newark Football Club, are clear that they consider an affordable lease is £10,000 per annum and not the expectations set out by the landlord. The landlord has written to the council and asked that we guarantee the site to the value that is set out at paragraphs 2.8 of the agenda. You will see there that we have no reason to disagree with the view of the club in terms of the rent that is affordable and appropriate, and it's certainly not something that we consider is something that we can take forward. So as you will see from the recommendations, which are detailed at section 7 on page 5, it's recommended that we inform the owner company, if you like, the landlord, so the bracket SCC Limited company, that the proposal detailed at 2.8 for that 45, 55, £75,000 arrangement is declined, and that we offer to act as broker and continue to work, if there is willingness to do so, with CB Collier NK Limited and the Sports and Social Club to see if we are able to reach a mutually acceptable lease arrangement, or indeed, if necessary, to assist affected clubs and associations in seeking to find alternative accommodation. Happy to take questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Matt. And there's a number of comments I'd like to make on this, but I think it's proper in the first instance I go to Councillor White as a Bolton councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. I think firstly, I'm astounded that this piece of land was only sold for £1 and that neither the club, parish council or indeed the district council were actually invited to put a bid in for this, because it's land which, as far as I'm aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, they can't build on it. Is it not still protected space, Matt? Can you answer that?
Yes, I can, Councillor, through you, Chairman. The land is protected sports and recreational land. That's both in terms of our own development plan, but statutorily through the requirements of Sport England. So yes, it is protected by that for at least 10 years.
Okay, thank you. So it just beggars belief that they're kind of, they sold this for £1 for somebody, knowing that they can't build on it. One of us could have taken it over, especially the club, who have been there a long time and are doing pretty well. So I just really wanted, it's quite astounding, really.
Absolutely, thanks, Ronnie. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, I was going to pick up on the point that Ronnie made, really, but also following on from Matt's answer. 10 years hence, could the owners of that land decide they might want to build houses on it, and that it feels like it feels wrong to me, as it does Ronnie, obviously, that can happen. I'd like to ask Matt if there's any way that we can 10 years hence make sure that green space isn't taken up by housing development.
Matt?
Yes, thanks, Councillor. Yes, the short answer is, obviously I can't see into the future, but through the various iterations of both the development plan and indeed Sport England as the governing body, yes, there is the ability to continue to seek to retain that for protected sporting use. The issue, of course, is that does not mean it's used for said purpose.
You want to come back on that, Paul?
If that's okay, Dave. The concern is that the owners are forcing out all the sports on that site. So it may be that for the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years, there may not be any sport on that site, and they may then build a case to say, well, there's not been a demand for sport on that site, and that's the worrying thing.
Absolutely right, Paul. Councillor Blaney.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll be limited in what I say because as Chairman of the Planning Committee that refused the planning application, I could be involved personally in the appeal which has been lodged. But let me concentrate upon the report before us. I very much welcome in paragraph 2.5 the fact that we are going to be writing to Homes England. That is absolutely crucial, because at the Planning Committee we had concerns about the involvement or lack of involvement, in a sense, of Homes England, and a belief that they needed to be involved if we were going to secure an appropriate development on this site. All of that having been said, I can understand the comments that have been made by already, in that it seems very strange and disappointing that when sports land is purchased for £1, the rent that is requested on that goes from 45,000 to 55,000 to 75,000 per annum over a 3-year period. It does seem to be a remarkable rate of return. We have actually just had confirmation that this is protected sports land, and I think we should do anything and everything we can to ensure it remains as such. Therefore, I do think the recommendation is the right one, that we reject the offer, an offer that I think was put to us on the basis that we would reject it, to be perfectly honest, but that we also seek to act as a broker. And in acting as a broker between the Sports and Social Club and Collier, CB Collier NK bracket SSC close bracket, I'd hope that we might be in a position to make common sense prevail and a more reasonable offer be made to ensure this doesn't just remain statutorily as sports land, but actually remains in reality as land on which sports are played. And that has to be the objective in recommendation B, and I fully support those two recommendations.
Thank you, Roger. Councillor Wendels.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I'm also in support of the recommendations. It's a very large amount of rent that's been requested here by the landlord. It's unaffordable to the club, so I do agree that we should do our best to act as a broker between the two parties to see if we can try and get a mutually acceptable position. But I don't believe that we should be underwriting this large amount of rent. I think there'll be sports clubs and I should say landlords and owners of sports pitches across the whole of the district who would then be looking towards a similar arrangement, and we'd be getting all sorts of requests in, and landowners looking to gain large amounts of rent on the back of this, including, who knows, maybe the owners of the football pitches and multi-use games area in my own ward, and I think they'd be coming in all over the district. I think it is something that I think would be a very negative precedent, and I agree that we need to decline the proposal, but do our very best to broker a deal between the parties.
Thanks, Tim. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, well, just to really agree with what Tim's just said, actually, I don't think we can get financially involved because we're every sporting organisation within the district looking for the same agreement for money. But I mean, no, we should always encourage sport and help wherever we can. And we've got a very good sports development team within Northamptonshire, which goes out there and helps all clubs wherever it can in promoting and supporting young and older people into all sports. And I think we do a fantastic job there. But financially supporting rental of grounds is something we cannot get involved in. And it's totally wrong what the landlord's trying to do to that sports field.
Thank you, Roger. Matt, can I ask, we have the financials there for years 1, 2, 3, 45,000 rising to 75,000. Has the landowner stroke landlord in any way suggested periods of rent reviews thereafter? Is it 3 years limited, every 3 years? Any indication?
Chairman, we've not got into that level of detail yet. There has been, it has been made clear that the expectation is that that would be fixed and capped, but that is not a negotiation that's taken place.
Thanks, Matt. I think that's an important question to answer. If I can just sort of summarise the debate and inject my own views. Councillor Blaine is quite right, and I'm very conscious that the application for almost a donut with a bite taken out of it, the land around this has been put forward for the housing, and it was rejected, we understand, on the basis that whilst there may have been arguments by the landowner of viability, nothing was coming forward there in terms of what we might expect, similar to the report earlier in section 106 around affordable housing, open space, public space, sports provision, whatever it might be. In my head, I'm not part of that inspection or that appeal. I've spoken of the donut with the bite taken out of it because the bit in the middle is open space and sporting provision. that the report is quite clearly indicated, albeit held by a different company, there is a direct read across of the individual. I think in the first instance, I would have to say, and I hope I don't offend people in this, that I think the first disappointment is of Flowserve itself in exiting that site. That for, as I understood it, a long time supported that social club, but, you know, in original days, largely comprised of its employees and the families of, and have watched that sport grow. They're good clubs, as I understand. I think you all know football isn't my sport, but I've looked into it. They're not just good clubs, but they're growing and they're promoting. And you've seen that huge list of sporting clubs and people that use that site. And so I struggle that it's been purchased for £1, and yet somebody wants £75,000 a year rent from that. And that is why I asked about rent releases or clauses, because we can see it goes from 45 to 75. We've had the explanation that if land isn't used for 10 years, then one can object to its protection and designation. And in my mind, if the amount of rent, I would argue 45 might be excessive, but if it kept going up, it would mean whomsoever the tenant was would struggle with viability and retaining it. It almost feels to me like the land might be vacated at some point and no one could afford it for a period of 10 years. I'm sufficiently brazen, I think, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, to say that as I read the offer that has been put to the council and how we consider it, I almost feel we're being held to ransom. That very successful clubs that are hugely valued locally are at risk that we would seek to protect. But as colleagues have quite clearly demonstrated, that can be replicated in every village, every area of our district. We have a number of football clubs tithed to welfare clubs from some of the funding during the 80s. I'm thinking of Clipston in particular and others. So I recognise, you know, quite rightly the argument, if I can call it sluicegate, that where would you stop? Where is the parity when you start to consider that? But I just go back to the base one, that I don't think this approach is appropriate. None of the evidence of the assessments of the rent that could be achieved have been shared with us as a committee, at least. And until such time, I question the validity of those. So absolutely the recommendations are correct, that I don't think in any sense or way possible could we accept the proposition being put to us. I think it's absolutely a requirement that we seek to broker a sensible way forward here. And I think, sadly, it's entirely appropriate that we pick up on the comment in the report that we are ready for the worst case scenario, that should it come to it, we will assist those clubs and sporting organisations there to find an alternative home. Now, I hope that never arises, and I'm going to say that those clubs have got the full support of myself, at least, and that is me not speaking on behalf of the council, but as a councillor. I've got an unfortunate taste in my mouth over this report, but I will fully support those recommendations. And I think very stridently, we will do everything we can to support those very long-standing clubs and that significant community asset. Councillor Blaney.
Just coming back and supporting everything you just said there, Chairman, I think the real regret here is that the planning application was not an application that covered the whole of the land that had been sold by Flowserve. Because had that been the case, the level of open space provision, indeed sports provision, for the development that was proposed residentially on this land, the rest of the land, might have been one that would have gained far greater support from the planning committee, which was unanimous in refusing the application it had before it.
Thank you, Councillor Blaney. That's a useful reminder of my well, I don't think it's just mine. I think our obvious frustration and difficulties with this shouldn't impede us trying to reach the best solution possible. And to some extent, I'm not sure we should preempt the outcome of that planning appeal either. So I'm grateful to the officers for bringing this forward. I'm glad the issue is in the public domain, and I'm glad pretty much everybody on committee contributed to that, and I get the sense there's a level of unanimity. Councillor White, as the ward member, would you like to propose those recommendations? You can nod.
I will propose them, yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'll happily second them then. Is there anybody that objects? Very pleasingly then, that is unanimous. Thank you to committee for their consideration and to Matt and officers for bringing that forward, and fingers crossed we can get a positive outcome on that. But let's just iterate. I wouldn't want anybody thinking that decision means there is no indication of support for those clubs and getting an outcome here. There absolutely is. Difficult situation. Thank you, committee. I said at the outset, I nearly forgot that I'd accepted another item we'd receive at 11A, that being the item on community engagement officers, and that is coming to us from Suzanne Sheed.
Thank you, Chairman, for accepting this late item. So this is regarding the approval for recruitment of additional community engagement officers to the Health, Housing and Wellbeing Directorate. So this report brings forward the proposal as an urgency item because we would like to do a swift recruitment that will assist in the short term with our response and recovery to COVID and also the impending flooding season. However, the main focus of these posts is to provide a greater resource across the district to respond as HART when the emergency response is required, to support parish and town councils to create local partnerships that help build local communities, shared services and share practical support and good practice to increase skills that might not already be in place. So, for example, it might be facilitating conversations between groups who need premises and parish councils, signposting, identifying gaps and supporting members to fill those gaps and make sure that the communities are more self-sufficient. Also, there's a role for enhancing the role of members, raising their profile and looking for opportunities to link members with local groups and find synergies between different teams and different groups. I do anticipate that these roles will evolve over time to meet the needs of the community that they're serving. But the good thing by increasing the capacity within this team is that it will also enable us to flex to meet the changes. If you give it COVID as an example, our team were able to turn into a responsive HART to deal with what the communities needed at that time. By increasing the capacity of that team, we'll be able to do that swifter and have more impact across the whole district. At Appendix A and B, this shows the difference in the structures, but it's essentially 2 additional roles. Also, in with this, we're looking to expand the role of the community engagement officer to also pick up some of the resettlement support that we do for families that are resettled to the area, rather than this being a standalone role, because we think it helps with the integration and just settling people into the communities. So I'm asking the committee to support the recruitment of 2 community engagement officers and the budget provision of £75,125 within the general fund for next financial year and onwards, as set out in section 8. If we're able to recruit this year, we will be able to find the resources for that within existing budgets. Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Suzanne. And your first question is coming from Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, it's not a question. In fact, it's a congratulations on a fantastic idea and a reaction to a growing need. And also to extend my thanks, but I'm sure that's on behalf of the whole committee, the thanks to the HART team and actually the entire COVID response from all our colleagues within the council. But I think one of the things that COVID has done, and I've said it before, has sort of uncovered some areas of need that have been neglected in the past. So I think it's crucial, these posts are crucial, and I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to or not, but I'd like to move the recommendations.
Well, do you know what, Paul? Whether you're allowed to or not, you just did. Such a committee rules. Well, that's good, actually, Paul. I welcome that. And to colleagues, very noble of you, Suzanne, but this has come forward as an urgent item, somewhat at my request, because it was being discussed and thought through. And as Suzanne's quite rightly said, you've got flooding coming up, we've got post-COVID recovery. Ordinarily, mea culpa, I put it through Homes and Communities for consideration coming forward, but I chose that we just needed to move on with this. So just make a few comments, and I'll bring in Councillor Wendell's, Chairman of Homes and Communities. Absolutely the right time to do it. Very many things to be done there. I think through, now I keep saying HEART team, but the T stands for team. So through HEART, Humanitarian Assistance and Response Team, I think I got it right. We've not only proven, but we've learned a lot, I think, through COVID. So the very many different community groups that exist and what they do, not just continual, not just charity, not just parish councils, all manner of people have popped up and come forward, including councillors who are closest to communities, know them best, and we've learned that they are different sort of vehicles and funnels for not just hearing about communities, but delivering it back to them. And I do think, you know, Suzanne has said, and picking out the items in 3.4 there, that, you know, okay, COVID is immediate, flooding may be immediate, but there are those constant issues of growing these groups and supporting them and sustaining them, and realising something broader than that. So, you know, we're looking at town centre management, but a single person liaising with all those businesses and all those employers, it's a lot of work. So if these community engagement officers know their communities, we've got that opportunity. I think it used to be described as lozenging, which I've never really understood, but of understanding the people in the community and connecting them to the employment opportunities or the jobs or the new public service intervention that's coming, or the charities that can support them or to prevent them becoming homeless. You know, so many different things that, you know, we deliver brilliantly as a council, but through Castle House and different offices. The more advocates, the more people that can widen this, the better. But we need people to raise that awareness, to upskill and to deliver this. So I think it's cracking. But Councillor Wendell's.
Thank you, Chairman. Echo those comments. Absolutely agree with that. This team do a fantastic job. They're very stretched at the moment. I think we really do need these 2 new posts. They will flex. They'll be there for the requirements we have, whatever that may be. I'm sure they will be extremely busy, and I think it's going to be an excellent addition to the establishment. We did offer our thanks as a committee, Homes and Communities, on Monday night to the team and everyone who's been involved in the response to COVID. They're doing a fantastic job, and I sort of reiterate that thanks again this evening. But I think agreeing to these 2 additional posts will certainly assist.
Thank you, Tim. Are there any further questions for the Director of Housing, Health and Wellbeing? I noticed, Suzanne. No? Okay, well, we look forward to the 2 further reports on this, Suzanne, but thanks for bringing it forward. I've got a hunch I know what the outcome of this is. So Councillor Peacock has proposed it, I'll second it. Is there anybody that disagrees with these propositions? Brilliant. Unanimous. Thank you very much, Suzanne. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Right, so returning, and that's the extra item taken then. So now we're through to the finance items for decision, the first of which being item 12, which has a ludicrously long title I'm not going to read out. So let's just paraphrase it. So Sanjeev is going to talk to us about how we're getting on with our finances.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Yeah, the report before you sets out the financial position of the council's general fund housing revenue account and the capital programme for the first 6 months of the financial year and forecast to the end of the year. Starting first with the general fund, the position is summarised in table 3.1 at the bottom of page 80 and goes on to page 81. You'll see from this table that the unfavourable variance on net service budgets is 953,000. That's pretty similar to the position that was reported at the end of Q1. The overall unfavourable variance for the whole council is just over £1 million at 1,094,000. The detailed variances by committee are set out in Appendix A. Chair, I will just put a caveat to these figures and this report. in that these figures don't include the impact of the district entering into Tier 3 under the local COVID alert and then into the national restrictions. This is the financial position to the end of September, and work has been carried out between the finance officers and the budget managers throughout October. The full position of the impact of the national restrictions will be built into the next quarter's report, which will come back to Policy and Finance in January. The main reason for the unfavourable variance of just over £1 million is pretty much as reported at the end of Q1, and that is due to the loss of income, the substantial loss of income from our sales, fees and charges, and that is now a total of 1,643,000. Some of that lost income has been offset by savings in costs, and therefore you've got an overall position just shy of 1.1 million. Now, we estimate that by the end of the year, we will be able to reclaim from government compensation for loss of income. And I'm estimating that at between 300,000 and 500,000, which will then take us to a year-end position forecast of an unfavourable variance of between 594,000 and 794,000. Now, members will quite rightly wonder how we're going to make that deficit up. And you'll recall that I did report to Policy and Finance at the last meeting that the Nottinghamshire authorities are working on just trying to forecast what the outturn position is going to be on the business rate pool across Nottinghamshire. So clearly we anticipate a redistribution of that pool, which will make up some of that deficit, if not all of it. If the council finds itself still in a deficit position by the end of the year, the council currently has sufficient resources in its medium-term financial reserves to cover any unfavourable variance if that's necessitated by the end of the year. So, Chair, that's the general fund position. The housing revenue account position is set out in section 3.14 on page 83 of the report. And members will see that the projected outturn position is a favourable variance against budget of just shy of £2 million at 1,955,000. Now, members will also recall when the decision was made to bring the housing service back in-house, Savills anticipated that we would make savings of just under £1 million. So this is a really positive position to be reporting at this stage. The main reason for the favourable variance, again, are itemised for members in section 3.21 on page 84. I'll finally move on to the capital outturn position. So the overview of the capital outturn position for the general fund and the HRA projects is set out in the table in section 3.22 on page 85. All of the variations are detailed in Appendix D. Some of them are timing differences, as you'd anticipate with major capital projects. The changes since the last Policy and Finance Committee are set out in Appendix C of this report, and these will require approval from the committee. And Chair, that just brings me to the recommendations, and there needs to be a slight amendment to the recommendations, and I do apologise. This is something I just spotted as I was reading the report prior to the meeting. Recommendation C at the moment in section 5 on page 87 needs to change from the variations being approved in Appendix C, not Appendix D. Chair, apart from that slight change in the recommendations, that's all I have to say on the report. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Sanjeev. So just to iterate for the record, in proposing these recommendations, there is that variation. Sanjeev has had his appendix removed. It's gone from D to C. I think we're all quite content with that. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just 3.21, the reasons for the outturn. I see the $750,000 is because of temporary vacancies. Are they expected to be filled in the future, or are they going to be permanent vacancies? Because that's nearly half, well, a third of the savings.
Chair, I'm assuming Councillor Jackson's referring to the HRA variance and the savings on the HRA of 1.955 million. Councillor Jackson, the plan is to fill those vacancies. Suzanne Sheed is, as she reported earlier, is working on a structure for that service area. So some of those posts will be filled as part of that restructure.
Okay, no further hands are up. Often the case on finance reports, unfortunately. But again, it's compliment, Sanjeev, it's compliment that the details are all there. I think it's probably just worth recapping on some of this. There is that forecast deficit, and it has been explained that it's manageable. But much like the national government, any business and probably any household at the moment, there have been expenditures we didn't forecast, investments we've chosen to undertake, like free car parking for quite a long period, and many others actually more recently, that we're choosing to make to try and help communities and economies sustain and bounce back as soon as possible. And we may as well be open about that. We have an interest in it, not just in terms of that and supporting residents, but it generates business rates, it generates council tax, it's what our budget is. But we've not been profligate in anything we've done. We've not been throwing money out the door. We've looked at these issues. We've understood how best we can invest, in addition to directing all those government's grants, I think, quicker than any other council in the country, if we're honest. We've done a cracking job on that. But we've applied our own resources to look into that, to do what we can, to understand those measures, but not to imperil the council going forward, because this could last for some time. And I'm hoping, Sanjeev, you might nod or shake your head at this, but the comprehensive spending review is quite fresh. So I'm hoping some of the components of that might adjust our position in a positive manner going forward. Slight nod there, that's like, yeah. So it's perhaps not as bleak as it looks in that respect, but it's manageable. And then again, on the housing revenue account, some people might zoom in and think, well, you're making a profit out of that. It's not a profit, it's surplus. It has to be ring-fenced as a housing revenue account. It will be reinvested. Sanjeev's usefully reminded us of the premise for bringing housing in-house. That isn't a critique of Newark and Sherwood homes. It was just identification of duplication, things that could be done differently to free up these resources. And our housing services team are doing a cracking job at the minute. Again, I know full well they are looking into voids, different systems, different areas we need to invest and improve. Through these efficiencies and savings, we're able to reinvest in those services to improve them for tenants, and indeed to bring forward building more homes for them and reducing our category 1 and 2 waiting list. So everything's stacking up and working well. We're protecting the most vulnerable as best we can. We're investing in our economy. We're doing what we can as a council, not just to sustain our services, but to try and prop up as many people as best we can so that we're as normal as possible when we come out of this. Chief Exec's flashing blue at me. Are you trying to jump in there, John? No.
I'm not, no.
Oh, right, okay. You were unmuted, I get it. Any further questions or comments on this? Okay, well, I know there'll be more on later items, but Sanjeev, it's regarded as a central service or a support service, but I'm not sure we could have done very much without the support of our finance team throughout all we've done and going forward. So I know we keep saying it, but it needs to keep saying. Can you please pass on our thanks in regards to all colleagues in that section, and Suzanne, seriously, to all our colleagues in housing services as well, if you could. Thank you both. So I will move those recommendations.
Seconded, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gurr. Is there anybody objecting to those? That is also unanimous. Gosh, wonderful. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sanjeev. All right, sorry for the delay. There we are. So we're through then to item 13. Might seem bizarre to some. It didn't originally, but it has more recently had electrics. Newark Castle electrical upgrade and fire alarm installation. Item 13. We are joined. Caris Coulton Jones.
Hello. Thank you, Chairman. So this report is to advise members of electrical upgrade works, including the installation of a fire alarm system at Newark Castle, which is required to ensure that the site retains compliance with health and safety measures following a review that was undertaken last year. It has been delayed over the course of this year, but the work is now required in order to reopen the castle in 2021. In the interim, however, we have worked with an external consultant to develop the scheme and obtain the pre-tender estimate, and with Historic England to obtain scheduled monument consent. A budget was already allocated in 2019 to undertake preliminary work from the site review. 26,400 remains from this budget held in reserves, and therefore the recommendation is that a capital budget be created in 2020-21, so this year, for a total of 85,000, with a contribution of 58,400 from the Change Management Reserve to complete these works urgently. Thank you.
Thanks, Caris. Any questions or comments at all on that? Okay, so I'll propose.
Second, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Is there anybody against? Right, well, Caris, thanks for being with us for an hour and 22 minutes in order to put that forward. Brilliantly presented. That's why it went so swimmingly. Very grateful to you. Nice to see you, Caris. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye now. Right, and on we go then. So our next item, item 14, Ollerton Local Housing Office, refurbishment and repurpose, and it's Jill again.
Thank you, Chairman. So this report follows on again from last Monday's Home and Communities Committee, which approved the recommendation that members support the proposal to refurbish and repurpose the local housing office in Ollerton, and recommend to Policy and Finance Committee that this policy be added to the HRA capital programme for 2021. Currently, due to COVID, we are not delivering a face-to-face provision in Ollerton from either the Town Hall or what was the housing office operated by Newark and Sherwood Homes, initially on Sycamore Road. Neither site in their present state are able to meet the COVID secure standards. The Council recognises that there is a much needed demand for services in the Ollerton and Sherwood area, and following the housing management returning to the Council, now is a perfect opportunity to review the provision of face-to-face services in Ollerton. Not doing so would result in a fragmented service to the customer, council services being delivered from 2 locations within 1 town. As this committee is more than aware, we have been actively seeking a solution for a number of years to develop a public sector hub in the Sherwood area. Hopefully the project looking at the regeneration of Ollerton Town Centre will be the conduit for this. However, it will be a number of years before this comes to fruition. In the meantime, we still need to be able to deliver a service to our residents, especially at this time when unemployment is rising and there is an increase in the number of our residents suffering from hardship. Having looked at the options available in conjunction with our risk and safety officer and wanting to be able to deliver face-to-face service as soon as possible, we feel the most suitable option is to deliver a council service from what was the housing office on Sycamore Road, and the proposals are detailed in section 3 of the report. However, the Sycamore Road office is extremely dated and had very little in the terms of modernisation over the last number of years to ensure it is of acceptable standard for both our customers and staff. Providing the funding of the refurbishment is approved, then discussions will take place with the DWP to see if they would be willing to return to deliver a face-to-face service in Ollerton. I'm sure that you will be thinking that asking for £50,000 for a lick of paint is a lot of money, and I would agree with you if that was all that was required. This refurbishment isn't just a refresh of the paint or the installation of plastic security screens. It includes reconfiguring the layout to make better use of the limited space for customers and staff, providing a much needed digital area where customers could use the self-serve computers to transact either with us or other partner organisations, and the ones we had in the town hall were always well used. The back office area would be reconfigured to enable not only the customer services team to be based there, but for any staff to be able to go and work from there if they need to do so. And in addition, there would be a much needed refurb to the staff welfare area and also a replacement heating system. Staff are currently having to use fan heaters to supplement the heating, which isn't acceptable. Customers in the Sherwood area currently have no site where they can access council services, and this refurbishment would enable it to happen. Regarding the all-important finance, this office currently sits within the HRA, and discussions have taken place as to whether the refurb should be funded from the HRA or general account. And the discussion was, yes, this needs to be funded from the HRA, and then the non-housing costs recharged back to the general fund. Longer term, the thought is that when the public sector hub is created, these offices will be converted into domestic properties, hence the reason for keeping the budget within the HRA. Today, I am asking this committee to add this project to the HRA capital programme for 2021, and asset management have estimated that the maximum cost of the refurb will be £50,000. I hope that I've explained our rationale for the refurbishment, and the recommendation is on page 103. Thank you, Chairman, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jill, and thanks for that presentation. That was excellent. I think you've probably covered off a huge number of questions there and really raised the salient issues to us. So I'm going to propose the recommendations straight away. But you're absolutely right as to the importance to this. I think we can be a little candid that we've been trying to work on this public sector hub for a while, and I think we've now realised it is some way off. We'd hoped it might have reached fruition by now, but it hasn't. And you're absolutely right that we need to have a level of access and a demonstration of a welcoming environment in the Sherwood area, but very definitely in Ollerton, similar to the investment we're making in other areas. We said that when we developed Castle House, that it might be a centralised pod for a number of staff, but we would have outreach in other areas. And I want them to be commensurate. I want them to look welcoming, new, and the self-service and accessibility measures you've mentioned. So I am aware some people might think 50,000 and we might move in a few years. Is that a waste? No, because we don't want people in our communities looking at tired offices, unable to find them, unable to access the services. And I really hope that this helps ensure that the DWP continue that outreach work for us, because I know, especially in Ollerton, how difficult it was. You almost lost a day of your benefits paying for the bus to and from Mansfield, and that's just madness. So good stuff. Thanks, Jill. I'm going to open it up. I've got Councillor Peacock with his hand up.
Yeah, just actually to say I'm fully supportive of this, and to again echo some of David's words. We're going to have a real bad spell, I think, after Christmas in terms of financial hardship and people having problems. And I think increasing the number of staff, increasing the resources in that area, investing in the services and making them more available and welcoming is exactly what's going to be needed quite soon after the new year. Which leads me on to my question, Jill. How soon, once this decision is made tonight, how soon can we get this work done so we can get a COVID secure 5-day-a-week service over in those offices?
Hopefully within, I would think by April. We'd like to go out to tender immediately, get the quotes in, get the work done. We've been advised it'll be about 8 to 10-week turnaround, and we can then open as soon as possible, but hopefully no later than the beginning of April.
Can I come back on that, David? So, April's a long way off for a lot of people, and I'm wondering, we as a council, and perhaps you, Jill, in your role, can we think of the ways in which we can get some services, outreach services over there, to help those people who are or will be in financial hardship, and find a way to provide those services in the interim?
We'll certainly look at what we can do, but we aren't actually open in Newark. We're not providing, apart from urgent services, but we will certainly look at what we can do and support in all we can, certainly.
Okay.
Okay, Paul. Councillor Wendell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we do need to get a face-to-face service back up and running in the Sherwood area, both for our own tenants and broader customers. So I fully support this proposal, and it was supported by the Homes and Communities Committee as well at the meeting on Monday. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Councillor Girling?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just, in relation to what Councillor Peacock said in terms of the outreach element, is it my understanding, and I need to be corrected if I'm wrong, is that's part of what the Heart team does, isn't it? Where they get out there to find it where people do need that additional support and help facilitate that. And this report really is all about making sure that there's a static place for people to go to as soon as we possibly can get that. Am I right in thinking that, please?
This would certainly be a static place where people can go. They can come and meet council officers. Hopefully that we have the DWP there, but certainly our Heart team and other officers within the council to deliver an outreach service, and we will assist those customers in any way we can.
Thanks, Jill. Paul?
Yeah, just one thing, because I forgot about it. I had a conversation regarding this with Councillor Cumberledge, who's obviously also the Mayor of Ollerton, and she requested basically that could the council consult with Ollerton Town Council, Ollerton and Booton Town Council about these changes, so they're fully aware of what is happening over there.
Certainly, I actually spoke to her myself today, and I've got a call penciled in with her tomorrow as well. And then I've already had discussions with Karen Wakefield, and she's confirmed that's the best way for me to have those discussions. And then we'll if I need to go into a Teams meeting with the town council, then I will certainly do that as well, to have discussions with those.
Got a thumbs up there from Councillor Peacock. Right, I'm going to propose those recommendations. Councillor Wendels is nodding me that he's seconding, I think. Yes, he is. Thank you, Tim. Anybody objecting to those? Are we going to fall out about anything tonight? Wonderful. Okay, that's unanimous as well. Item 14. Thank you very much, Jill.
Thank you.
Through then to policy items for information. Item 15, Q2 performance report. I'm guessing this will be Debs Johnson and Natalie Cook, possibly.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This report is to present members with an overview of Q2 performance against the objectives and the actions within the community plan. So we've done quite a bit of work on the report, ensuring that the commentary for each objective is about outcomes and gives members information on the impacts that's been made by undertaking these activities. The report also includes a section on customer contacts and customer feedback. Performance reports are evolving, and next committee cycle, each committee will receive a performance report. Not only will it include achievements against the community plan, but a suite of PIs. We're also working on gathering our residents' views and should be able to give you information on satisfaction from our residents as we move forward. Members should note that this report measures against the community plan in February as it relates to Q2 data, which is from July to September. And members will begin to receive reports against the community plan refresh in the February-March cycle against Q3. And I'll just hand over to Natalie now, who's just going to pull out one or two elements of the report for you.
Thanks, Deb. So as Deb said, this report is focused on Q2 data, which is from July to September. So we have included a table at 2.4, which provides the national and local context to the lockdown restrictions at that time. Members will recall that in July, we started to see some of the lockdown restrictions ease, and it is this context that activities against the plan are being reported. So section 3 of the report sets out commentary and progress against the objectives within the plan. It is worth noting that progress has been made against the objectives in Q2, but some of these activities have not met their target due to COVID-19 restrictions. Section 4 of the report covers our customer contacts and customer feedback. Face-to-face inquiries reduced at Castle House during this period as we were operating on an appointment-only basis, whilst telephone inquiries increased during this period. Engagement on the council's social media pages has increased in terms of reach and engagement, and the figures in the report give some insight into customer preference for interacting with the council in Q2. For members' information, I'm going to attempt to explain what reach and engagement is, but bear with me. So reach is the term used to describe the number of accounts that the council content appears in an individual's social media feed. So for example, when an individual is scrolling, they see the council content in their feed. That is reach. Engagement relates to the number of likes, comments, click-throughs that an individual has engaged with on a council post. Performance monitoring of customer feedback is included as part of the Customer Insight projects, which will drive forward service improvement. Section 5 of the report includes staffing absence in Q2, and it is pleasing to note that sickness absence is below the target, and it has also decreased compared to the same period as last year. The council have undertaken a number of staff wellbeing initiatives during Q2, and some staff have even reported a reduced commute has had a positive wellbeing impact. Section 6 of the report includes our requirement to report on RIPA, and further detail on why we report that is in paragraph 6.2 of the report. Finally, Chairman, the recommendations are at the bottom of page 114.
Thanks, Debs. Thanks, Natalie. Thanks for reminding me about reach and engagement. I'll remember it eventually. I'm grateful for that. Let's skittle through the report. Section 6, lovely. Thanks for that. The rest of it then, I think colleagues will notice this is quite a different format. Certainly it's one that I welcome. So I think colleagues all know we're constantly working now on improving how we not just report performance, that's almost the back end of this. This is how we manage performance and identify what we're doing and how we're working towards it. So I hope I'm not being indiscreet if I share that colleagues that have just presented and others have almost done it virtual. Sit down and talk to me with business managers, fleshing out some of the things that are happening on the ground. And I think that presents back to us all a really useful narrative as to what's occurring. It's so much more meaningful than the sort of historic things we had, measuring what we can measure, rather than sort of telling us how successful we're being. And a lot of those you can't do as a thermometer or a smiley face or a green coloration. But this is really fleshing out those bits of the community strategy. I think it's proving that residents told us what these priorities were. We didn't magic them up. And we've reflected them in the community strategy. And even where we've not done performance indicators, or as councillors, we've chosen specific activities. What this report is showing is that colleagues have taken these on and marched with it. And there's so many things happening around those priorities and in different communities. And that's during COVID. So even where it might look like we're not performing, we massively are. We didn't set a PI for COVID, we didn't predict it. But again, so much of that is happening despite COVID. Where it isn't, it is because of COVID, but they're not issues that are detrimental to people's services they receive day in, day out. And you can see there, as we probably picked up on the customer feedback policy and others earlier, starting to learn, well, I say starting to, sorry, that's not fair, increasingly learning some sort of customer insight as to what people are feeding back to us on different things, what comes out most, not just complaints, but comments and compliments, of which there have been many recently. I'll open up to other colleagues to comment, but can I just please commend both officers and all that have helped them on this. I really like this as a way of putting things forward. I know perhaps on certain things, a ready retina with the smiley faces and red, amber, green, RAG. You didn't need to remind me of that one, Natalie. That does help just to convey things rapidly to people. But this sort of narrative and dialogue behind it, we're telling a story. And I don't think you can necessarily do that with numbers and coloration. So cheers to you both and to everybody that's helped with that. So open out to questions, and the first hand that went up was Councillor Wendell's.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to congratulate officers really on some tremendous performance during incredibly challenging times, and thank them as well for all the hard work. I think it's a really good report and some very positive news coming out of it. I'm particularly interested in Objective 4, building more homes and providing an excellent housing management service. And there's a very long list of bullet points there, which I'm not going to reiterate, but just to pick out a couple of highlights. There's really good progress being made on the HRA development programme, which is great to see. We're on site, construction's going well with the 40-bed extra care home in Booton. Our development company, Arkwood, has commenced on its first site on Bowbridge Road, which is really good news. And on Monday at our Homes and Communities Committee, we received another very positive performance report regarding the housing management function, which is continuing to improve and showing some really positive signs of continued improvement following it being brought back in-house. So it's all good news. I'm very pleased to see it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Councillor Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, again, agree with what Tim said. A very good paper and some really good points there. I was just going to refer to Objective 1, improvement of cleanliness and appearance of the local environment. As you know, we had the policy of not in Newark and Sherwood, which we were going to work really hard on last year, but well, this year's gone, but COVID sort of got in the way of that. But we are going to revitalise that next year. And also working with local communities, having the work days which we were having, unfortunately because of COVID had to come to a stop as well. So that is really very strong on the agenda. I know fly tipping is a scourge a little bit of our district, and we're really going to try and fight that and clear it up and get communities involved in keeping the Safer Cleaner initiative going forward into 2021.
Cheers, Roger. Councillor Girling.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm going to continue the loving, really, because you could go through every single item here and highlight lots of things, lots of positives in terms of what our officers have been getting on with despite COVID. And it hasn't been business as usual, to be fair. It's actually been better than that, and they should be commended for it. I'm just going to pick out a couple, really. One which is more relates to economic development, and that's the engagement with businesses. You know, it was said earlier that we got these loans out and things like that quicker than most anybody else. We were most certainly quickest in the county. I think it was recognised as the top 10 in the country on the first tranche of business loans. And I get, it's very rare as a councillor, you get people phoning you up and saying, well done. Yeah, but actually I've had more phone calls saying well done and thank you, Keith, and it's brilliant what the council's doing along those lines in terms of getting aid out to people, not just businesses actually, but where individuals have required any kind of aid, we've got it there, and it's a real testament to the professionalism of our staff. And I just go on also then to the Objective 9 and the is it 9 or 8? 8, sorry. It's my eyes. I should have gone to Specsavers. 8, and the rough sleepers, and now we've dealt with rough sleepers to get them, get them looked after, because in terms of COVID, they're going to be some of the most vulnerable, because they don't have facilities, access to wash their hands. They don't have access to a lot of things that we do to keep ourselves clean, to keep ourselves at a distance from things. And I think again we've done an incredible job there. And to make sure we're looking after everybody in society, not just one particular group. So well done on that. And I just think it's a really good report. And if people call us as a council, we should email them this report, absolutely, and let them argue with it, because this is evidence that we do a really good job, or you do a really good job, really. And I'd just like to thank you for that. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to love bomb this meeting? The Chief Executive.
Thanks, Dave. I'm not quite sure what a love bomb is, but I was just going to very quickly add to what Councillor Girling just said about business grants. There was a report on Notts Chief Execs this morning, and I think what was particularly pleasing was that not only have we paid out more money to businesses more than any other district, but we've done that more quickly as well. And I think Sanjeev and Nick deserve massive credit for making a decision to pay in advance of government funding coming our way. And I think Phil Ward is probably hiding somewhere behind the scenes on this call. And I think his team, the work they've done over the weekends and late into the night, has been absolutely instrumental in our performance on this particular indicator. So I think that trio and their teams really deserve some credit.
Thanks, John. Totally agree. I was going to say it on the next item that Phil's presenting, but cheers for that.
So was I, Chairman. So was
yeah,
I.
I know. You know what he's like. Just my fault. I invited the love bomb, didn't I? We'll explain it later. Never mind. Anyway. I should have actually picked up as well, Natalie properly reminded there, to pick up on some of those sickness stats and others. It's pretty incredible. I'm not going to share data, it's improper, but I know there's a number of people that haven't taken leave, have volunteered to be ambassadors on the streets and to work in different services. Some who are struggling to work from home, but obviously the opposite as well, as Natalie said, some quite enjoying it. So, thanks to all teams for that. It's quite interesting that those stats have been managed in that way, but also the team, the work they do internally that perhaps we don't promote externally as much. I know I've forgotten his surname, that Keith helps us with the internet messaging, but our little unit that's sort of supporting staff around, it's called mental health, but well-being and checking everyone's all right. I've been doing some pretty good stuff. The sausage casserole recipe was dreadful, but other than that, everything else has gone down quite well. I did the little checklist of different things to do each day going through the week. Didn't succeed very ably, but it was an interesting little exercise. This is really good, positive stuff at a difficult time. So it's excellent. And Keith, we'll pick up on that business rates thing on the next item, shall we? Yeah.
Yes, I think we will, Chairman.
Yes, I think so. So I'll propose those recommendations.
I'll second it, Chairman.
It is just a note, so it should be fairly straightforward. Are we all content that we've noted that excellent performance from our wonderful staff colleague team? Good. I really hoped that one would be unanimous. Right then, returning to the agenda, item 16, another long one, but business grants, council tax hardship fund, test and trace support payments. And I'm informed that it is the estimable Phil Ward presenting.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Yes, the main purpose of this report is to provide to members an update and assurance on the administration of a number of COVID-19 revenue support schemes. In particular, and not to be underestimated, is reference made to the pre and post payment checks made so far. So grant support given to local businesses is detailed in 3.1, 3.2 and 4.1 of the report. In summary, 2,397 grants have been paid to local businesses amounting to almost £27.9 million. Importantly, the insurance work conducted so far is detailed within Part 5 of this report and has included pre and post payment checks, including an extensive data matching exercise through the National Fraud Initiative. The council has prevented 2 fraud attempts totalling £50,000 and reported the attempts to the National Investigation Service. Unfortunately, however, the council has been the victim of 2 frauds totalling £20,000, where we have subsequently identified that the business was not trading on the 11th of March, which is the qualifying date for one of these schemes. However, one of these, £10,000, has been repaid and the other is in the process of being recovered. Moving on to council tax support, working age council taxpayers currently in receipt of council tax support have had a top up of up to £150, and this is detailed at 6.1 and 6.2 in the report. Moving over to benefits, the senior benefit officers continue to administer the test and trace support payment scheme, which provides a £500 payment where someone has been required to stay at home by the NHS test and trace service, and they will lose income as a result of self-isolating. Again, with this scheme, a range of prepayment checks are being conducted to ensure that payments are not being made in error or as a result of a frivolous claim. This is detailed at 7.1 through to 7.6 in the report. The various schemes have been funded by the government, and this is detailed at 10.1 through to 10.6. If I may, Chair, I would also like, not included in this report, are further business grant support schemes which are currently being administered by the revenue senior officers, which are in relation to businesses that have been required to close as a report of national restrictions, a further discretionary scheme to support businesses that, although not required to close, they have been impacted by the pandemic. And also going forward, now that we are moving into tier 3 higher restrictions, we will continue to support and grants will be paid. On this scheme, we have paid out grants to 764 businesses, which equates to £2.6 million. So, Chair, I'm willing to take questions and would ask the committee to note the recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Phil. I'm not anticipating a lot of questions, but a lot of compliments. So let me just kick off. Big thanks to you, David and Joanne, for all the team have done on this. It amazes me the numbers you're getting processed and out the door with the speed that you are. Obviously, also thanks to Sanjeev and Nick and everybody supporting the scheme. But I do sometimes wonder if the public knew how small the immediate team is processing this, and then looked at the numbers of things that are being done and the speed it's being done at. One almost wonders what hours you're working. So well done. Please pass those on. I better not say anything else. So I'll leave the rest now to Councillor Girling.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. I'll get in before the Chief Executive, shall I? I think if I've got a complaint about this report, it doesn't really demonstrate the amount of work that's gone on to do what they've actually done. You know, as Phil was saying, you know, it's not just a case of reading an application form and giving the money out. They're having to check. They're making sure that they're not fraudulent claims. They're chasing up on things where there's any doubt. You know, this is all time consuming for a really small team. And I had occasion to contact Phil Ward on behalf of a business. I think it was last week or the week before. And you've heard his tone presenting this report, and that goes a long way to calm a lot of the businesses down who are unhappy because they feel they should have had a grant or they should qualify. And even where, you know, if we make mistakes, he sorts it out in a calm, collective way where businesses feel that they're at least being listened to and their situations being considered. And you can't put a price on that. It's just absolutely fantastic. So I just want to say well done, Phil, to you and your team, and thank you for helping that business out that I came to you with. And as I say, my only complaint is really that although it'd be a 150-page report, I suppose, if we could absolutely demonstrate how much hard work's gone into doing what we're doing, and it's put us at the forefront of getting the payments out there. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Paul?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Just to, as an example or evidence of how crucial this work's been, I was at our Village Hall, Edwardstone Village Hall AGM just this Tuesday night, and basically without that business support grant in March or April or whenever it was, the Edwardstone Village Hall would have gone under and would be no longer available to provide vital community services in a vital community venue. And that's how crucial it is, not just to businesses, but also to those organisations in our communities who are serving people. And I'd also like to pass on my personal thanks to Phil, who showed incredible patience with me over a period of time, dealing with quite a few inquiries around business support grants. So I suppose it's a well done, Phil, and also sorry for my for how I was, I suppose. but you and the team have done a great job. And again, with all our colleagues, with all our staff, members are immensely proud of the work that you've done and you continue to do. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Roger?
Yes, thank you, Chair. No, again, agree with Keith and Paul. No, the team, Phil and his team have done a fantastic job. But I think what hit me was the speed of the turnaround they did of the applications. I mean, a lot of people, when COVID first started, were absolutely, and the lockdowns were like at the wit's end of how they're going to manage to, as Paul explained with some village halls, how they're going to continue in business or, or et cetera, et cetera. And when they apply for a grant and then a few days later the money was in the bank, it was a great relief for them, mentally as much as anything else. And so I think the speed at which some of the transactions were done were greatly, greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. Thanks, Roger. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Fill in your team, enjoy the moment, ordinarily collecting taxes, sending it back the other way. Yeah, we'll see what it's like in a couple of years. But everybody said the right things here. And actually, I do want to iterate some of the thanks to Sanjeev in particular, but also Nick and probably Mohammed and others that have supported him. The scheme and the policy that we had was worked up with other councils in Nottinghamshire. But as John rightly said earlier, Sanjeev recommended we confront this up with our own resources. We don't need to wait on the government to get going, and we did. And I don't want to name or shame, but I think one council in the geographic area of Nottinghamshire only launched their scheme yesterday or the day before, whereas we're chugging along to potential fruition at the time people really need these money. So that report isn't just looking at what we've just done. A number of occasions we've done this, and that money that was needed for council tax support, those on council tax support and reducing their bills, and there might be more of that through comprehensive spending. So the team have done brilliant work over and over and over again at amazing speed. And I've just been sent a message, I won't divulge my source, that the team that I mentioned earlier have actually on occasion worked over weekends to make this happen. So, huge testament and thanks to them for everything they've done. It's all good and well us saying it. I shared some comments with councillors the other day. If you go on our Facebook, you've got businesses putting up comments paying their direct thanks to that team. And that's not something we all that often see. So, Phil, to you, the team, to Sanjeev and all the others, these are not glib comments. And Keith is absolutely right. There are so many people out there that are hugely grateful. So thank you ever so much. So again, I'll move the recommendation. It was on page 119.
Second, Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody in objection with that? No? Right. Thank you for the report, Phil. Pass on our thanks to everyone.
I will do. Thank you very much.
Good man. Thank you. Right. So I think it is, am I right, that we exclude the press? Right. Just before we move on to item 17, which regrettably is exclusion of the press and the public, should we just very briefly reflect on the agenda we've had? In that we've had these proper updates on everything we're doing because of and during COVID, and witnessing the absolute commitment of our staff colleagues and partners, but the success of that. We've had reports about not waiting for funding from government on Towns Fund and others and cracking on to try and make sure those schemes come to fruition, to bolster the economy now and in the future and make that significant step change. You've had a performance report that shows the day job, if we call it that, has carried on and improved during COVID. We're improving customer service officers. You have an agenda there that this is a council that's doing the job and doing it pretty damn well, and making the changes necessary for now and in the future. I personally find it a really good agenda and incredible that our staff colleagues are doing all this work at this time. So item 17, I am sorry, we need to read this out in law. So I will be proposing that we consider resolving that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972 The public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. So moved. Do I have a seconder?
Second, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Girling. Is anybody against that? Okay, so as we've said in the past, the agenda is public, so public can see the items that we're about to discuss. We're not hiding anything. It's just that these might involve contracts and you don't tell people how much they might be paid before you put the tender out. So we'll now move into that private session and we'll just pause until Nigel lets us know that the public feed has been terminated. I'll be back in